Okay, I'm Amanda Helm, and I moved to New Orleans to teach at Xavier. I've been living in New Orleans about 4 years. I fell in love with New Orleans the very first time I saw it years ago when I was a college senior. Since coming to the city, ever since I've been involved with the city, I would say it has changed me. It has made me a different person. And one of the things that I would say New Orleans has, one of the ways it has changed me is it has made me a lot more expressive and a lot less structured or uptight about the way that I'm expressing myself or the way that I expect other people to express themselves. One thing that I've noticed about New Orleans, and particularly the music, I read an essay about this once actually, so I can't claim that it was an original idea, but it put forth, often we see these two different dimensions, or two ends of one dimension that differs among cultures. We classify cultures either individualist or collectivist. And I read this essay once that said that New Orleans is both. It is that New Orleans has mastered the art of collective individualism. And I thought that really hit the nail on the head. I would say more like communal individualism. And because it is very individualistic in the sense that it's not conformist at all, and individuals who stand out are appreciated. Even people who would be viewed as flat-out nutcases in a lot of cultures are viewed as characters or local treasures in New Orleans, which is something I love about it. And yet, it's also very shared. The community life is very strong, and every time there's an event or something like that, you see that both of those things coming out. So parade, jazz, all those things involve people coming together, and they have to both be able to do their own thing and have this beautiful variety of individuals doing their own thing, but they also have to listen to each other, notice each other, pay really close attention to what other people are contributing to this improvised event or improvised piece of music. You have to be able to really genuinely listen. And jazz improv involves really attentive listen. Jazz or any kind of musical improv, because you see that same kind of musical improv coming up in all these other genres of music. It's like everything turns into improv when they do it in New Orleans. Even rock and blues, all those things involve the same kind of collaborative soloing. Fusion, yes. Mm-hmm. And one time when I really got to experience that myself, I live in the neighborhood near the Maple Leaf Bar, and so the Maple Leaf Bar I view as my bar, and the house bands there I view as my house bands. And one of those bands that was one of my favorites was Papa Grows Funk. I love how they can play a set, and a set may have about 3 songs, because each song is such a long, extended jam, which frankly, before my association with New Orleans, I did not know how to appreciate that kind of jam. I expected a piece of music to be organized into an opening, a closing, maybe there are 3 verses, you repeat the chorus maybe 3 times. For some reason, you never repeat anything more than 3 times outside of New Orleans. But in New Orleans, we repeat things and repeat things and repeat things, and then we repeat it a little differently and a little differently. And then next thing you know, it's people solo it all over the place, and they did something different with it, and maybe you can hardly even recognize it by the end. But if you were with them all the way, it's a beautiful thing. And Papa Grows Funk music is always like that. And so I went to the goodbye show for Papa Grows Funk at the Maple Leaf Bar. They had several goodbye shows, and I went to several of them. But this was the goodbye to the Maple Leaf Bar. And so I was there, and it was very, very crowded, and I was short. And I still am short. And I was way far back in the crowd, and I really could not see the stage to speak of at all. But what I had a great view of was the artist Frenchie, and he was painting the Papa Gross Funk Farewell show. And so I was watching this, partly because it was something I could see, and partly because I was fearful the entire night that the dancing crowd was going to knock over Frenchie and the wet painting. It just seemed so precarious. And Frenchie painted completely oblivious to that. He was not thinking at all about, I mean, you could tell he was totally in a state of flow. And I watched this painting appear before my eyes. So it went from a blank canvas, and then by the end of the first set, he had kind of roughed in all the band members. And then the second set was when it got really interesting. He was putting in the color for the painting, a big impressionistic, bold impressionistic kind of style of painting. And I thought it was just amazing how he was dancing and the motion of the crowd and all of those things that I would have viewed as a distraction if I were trying to paint. He was unfazed by it, and he was even dancing himself. And then it dawned on me, belatedly, it dawned on me that he was actually painting the music itself. He wasn't painting the scene. That he was actually, you know, the trumpet would blow a note and he would, or there'd be some particular riff on the keyboard and he would have a of color in the painting. And so all of this wild color in the background of Frenchie's painting represented specific moments in the music. The painting actually became a visual record of the musical improv, which I thought was outstanding. So of course he moved. Of course he was dancing with it, because each movement of the brush was actually part of the music for the whole night. So that's one story. Last Mardi Gras, when it was so cold, it was sort of a horrible, raining, cold Mardi Gras, and we were hunting for Indians, and so we ended up at the 45 Chop bar on Chapatulas, where rumor had it that the Wild Chapatulas Mardi Gras Indian tribe was going to dress there. So it's early in the morning and we're there, but it's pouring rain, and Indians all over the city are choosing not to go out. And so sure enough, they were just throwing in the towel as we arrived. So they were just packing up their Indian costumes and giving up and saying they were not going to take them out that day. But the one good thing, so then there was this random collection of disappointed people sitting around the 45 Chop bar. And there were a few drummers in there, drummers that were going to play with the Wild Chapatulas. A few drummers from the Wild Chapatulas and a few miscellaneous other percussionists. And then they decided that they wanted to give the people something for all the people that had come out to make that Mardi Gras special. And so they called around to a few more friends and rounded up a few more percussionists. And so you had this ad hoc group of percussionists in the 45 Chop bar. And then they did, I guess you would call it a drum circle. But it was pure percussion, and it was thundering. The sound completely filled the bar. It was too loud really to be indoors, which was fabulous. And it was too cold to be outdoors, and so you had more people coming in, and it became this really exciting, I mean, you could totally forget everything, trance-like kind of rhythmic performance. And it was pure improv. I mean, these people had not played, some of them had played together before, but many of them had never played together before, and it was a completely ad hoc group. And then anyone who had any percussion skill or rhythm, anything, to the lady next to me started playing the ice in her empty drink glass. And so I did that too. It turns out ice in a plastic cup makes a pretty good maraca. So we were doing this and having a good time with that. And that was making a positive contribution to the overall layers of multiple rhythms and improv that was going on. In order to do that, everybody was making a lot of eye contact. So you had all these random percussion. I mean, people were beating on tables, but they're all getting in an angle where they can see the other players. And then by some unspoken, it just naturally evolved that a different player would be featured. And they would nod at a player, and then other people would do something less showy while that person did more of a show. So that was, very classic, taking turns, the standard jazz improv kind of format. But it was pure percussion only, and a lot of it was not even really instruments and such, although they were good. I suspect that even some of those who were not playing an instrument were drummers or musicians of some kind that didn't happen to have an instrument on them. And I went out to the car and I got my bones. I was starting to learn to play the bones, rhythm bones, and I wasn't very good yet, and I had never played in public. But it was so loud that I figured if I wasn't very good, it wouldn't matter very much. So I went and got mine out of the car, and then I tentatively played a little bit, and then they motioned me to come into the circle, which was so exciting for me to actually be one of the musicians who was in that group and making the eye contact and feeling where the rhythm was going to go next and supporting that. So it turned out to be such an exciting Mardi Gras, even though it started out to be so cold and rainy. And they had made a beautiful speech about it too. When they started the little drum circle, they made a speech to the bar that this was something that they were going to do in order to offer the people who had come out something, because you never know, it could be your last Mardi Gras, and so you have to make it really good